The following is a member of the Burke Reviews podcast family. BurkeReviews.com.
Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome!
Hey everybody, welcome to Bloody Awesome Movie Podcast. I'm John Burke from BurkeReviews.com, and with me is my kingsman to my statement. I don't say it nearly as eloquently as he does.
You're too kind. It's Matt from What I Watched Tonight. How you doing, John?
I'm doing pretty well, Matt. How are you today?
I'm not bad at all. It's a happy Saturday evening over here in the UK, so I'm looking forward to talking some movies.
I recorded a movie club earlier today with Corey from BurkeReviews.com, and we were talking about Sean Baker's Tangerine, and
Good film.
It is first time either one of us had seen it, and I've been meaning to watch it since I saw the Florida Project, but just hadn't got to it. And I got to tell Corey that I ate an honorary British breakfast this morning, which I've been wanting to try for a couple years now. I feel like it was Train Spotting that first made me like, I'm like, are those beans with eggs? And I've never seen that before, and then it's become apparent to me that many cultures eat beans with eggs for breakfast.
Yeah.
And it's just like an American thing that we don't. And I tried it this morning, as well as I made. I didn't tell you. I went a slightly healthier route, and I made turkey bacon and turkey sausage. It's
still bacon and sausage in some form.
Yes, yeah. That was my logic too. I was just like, it was cheaper and healthier, so I went with that. And I actually like turkey bacon. I know some people are against it, but I like it. And I made some hash browns.
Any bacon.
Yeah, and man, I gotta say, beans and eggs. I'm a big fan of baked beans.
Yes.
But I wasn't sure how they would go with eggs, and they were really good. Especially they mixed with the hash browns really well.
That has made my weekend pure now, because John had asked, as an English man, what goes into a full English breakfast, a fried breakfast. So I had to give what I thought would go into it, and I was pleased as punch to see John's interpretation was just as good as a greasy cafe in Essex or South London. So the question is, did you enjoy it as a whole?
I did very much. I actually was like full for like the whole day too. Like
Full English.
Oh man, I was like lunchtime rolled around. I was like, you know what? I think I'm okay.
It's not something you'd have probably weekly though.
Yeah, no, and I mean it was. I actually I make breakfast almost every morning. Like I do like 2 eggs and a little hash browns. That's usually it. So not as big a breakfast as I had this morning, but I've never blown a fuse in my kitchen like the 10 years that I've lived here, and I did this morning because I had so many things going. Like I was making my coffee, I had the beans. I actually repurposed beans because we had beans for dinner last night, so I used those. So I was heating that up in the microwave, and then I put toast in the toaster, and that was apparently the kicker. So I did burn my toast, which is crazy because I didn't mess up anything else, but I managed to burn the toast because it started to toast, then the fuse blew. And then when I put the toast back in to toast the rest of the way, I forgot to turn the heat down. And so,
you are spinning plates when you're making it. Same with any large meal, but when it's something as important as a full English breakfast, every component has to be spot on. So you literally have to have a Gantt chart to try and work out what goes on and when. But I'm very pleased that you actually managed to get out and try it. It makes my English heart flutter.
Yeah, I'm a fan of trying different foods and different styles of foods, I guess, because technically everything I ate is very normal American foods, just not always together. But yeah, I next time I do it though, I am gonna I didn't buy the Heinz baked beans, which I read is like the staple. Is that usually?
It is.
So I had Bush's baked beans, but they were really good, I will say. But I want to go full official next time.
Well, on the flip side, just very quickly then, what would be a traditional US breakfast for an English guy like me to have?
I'm guessing, I don't know for a fact, but I'm assuming biscuits and gravy are not a popular thing over there?
No, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, okay, so it's a sawmill gravy, so it's a white gravy, very heavy with pepper, and usually has sausage in it, and it's poured over a biscuit, usually buttermilk, fatty, horribly bad for you biscuit, but so tasty. And then grits. Are grits popular in Europe?
No, I know of them through cooking shows, but no,
Uh-huh.
it's not something that we have over here.
Yeah, I thought that was more of an American thing. So those would be the two things that I think are kind of staple American breakfast foods, especially from the South. I am technically Southern because I live in Florida and we are the South, but Florida has this weird because we have Disney and Universal and we're more of a tourist melting pot part of the South. We're not traditionally considered the South. And my family was from New York, so I did not grow up on either one of those two food items I just listed for you, but assimilated to them as I made friends, or I would stay at a friend's house, and they'd be like, "You want biscuits and gravy?" And I'm like, "What now? What's happening?" What? I eat Frosted Flakes. That's my breakfast. What are you talking about, biscuits and gravy? But yeah, biscuits and gravy are delicious. They are super bad for you. Like they have to be easily one of the fattiest things you could eat for breakfast outside of like pancakes and French toast or waffles. But oh, and chicken and waffles. I think that's an American thing. Although that's become really trendy now, so that might just be everywhere. But
It has infiltrated the United Kingdom.
I thought so. It's a hipster trend now. So
Well, I've never tried it, but I will try biscuits in gravy. So, for me, that just sounds like a digestive with Bisto on it. For the English viewers, you will also grimace with me, but it sounds interesting. But I will give it to make it, and I will give you photographic evidence.
there you go. I think chipped beef toast is a British meal. Is that wrong? Is that not a British thing?
I don't
Guess
think I've
not.
heard of it. I've heard
Okay.
of beef paste on toast and things like that, but
Well, a chipped beef is like it's chunks of beef in a white sauce that is technically a gravy. I was thinking that might be the closest thing to sausage biscuits and gravy, but probably not. But yeah, that sawmill gravy, the white gravy with the pepper in it, very popular in Southern cooking. It's on like country fried steak or chicken fried chicken, which might sound crazy.
fried chicken.
Yeah.
Sounds like something from The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's a real thing though. It's on menus. Yeah, I'm a fan of that gravy for sure. It's one of my favorites. I love a good chicken fried chicken or a chicken fried steak or country fried steak is another way of saying it. But yeah, it's a good gravy and it's really good on a biscuit. So yeah, man, I'd say look it up. It's definitely easy to make. It's got to be flour, water, and pepper, like and maybe salt or something. But it's I mean, you can get the instant made too, but if you're going to go for it, go for it.
Go whole hog, yeah. Well, I will do it. Like I say, I will send a picture across, and fingers crossed, it's as good as you say it is.
Yep. See, we're not just talking about movies here, people. We're talking about culture. So, this is the podcast that we look back at the month prior and the films that came out during the month. So we're going to be looking at June 2018 this month, which one of the issues with doing this podcast, transatlantic, is that movies come out at different times, and there were two this month. One that happened to The Unusual, where it came out for you first, was Jurassic World. Now, luckily, it did come out here with time for me to see it, but you got to see it like 2 weeks before I did.
Yes, and it must have been, like we've had with another film, it must have been pretty hard going online and not seeing any spoilers whatsoever for it, or even just plot points.
Yeah, it was everywhere I turned because they were like, Jurassic World's dinosaurs, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, stop it. Like, it's in the headlines. You can't spoil things in the headlines. That's cruel. But, yeah, I was not thrilled about that. But then Incredibles 2, which we should be reviewing this month for the States, we're going to hold off and talk about in more detail next month because it was delayed thanks to the what's that sport called? It's popular...
It's soccer, your favourite sport.
Oh, that's right, soccer. Yes, the World Cup is going on.
Yes, that's right. United States didn't qualify for once, but it is still going on.
See, I didn't even know that. But
Well, there you go.
it doesn't feel like most of my friends that watch it, and I have several who are like crazy about soccer. They don't root for America, anyways. They're all rooting for different countries. So, who knows?
I quite enjoy the United States teams because I know the female team is the best in the world, and the men's team is very talented, but just wasn't their year this year. But obviously, I follow England. But anyway, I watch every game I can and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I have a friend who was recording the games, and was watching them. Like he was avoiding scores all day, and then would watch them when he got home that evening. And I guess he started to watch one, and somehow hit a button on his remote that jumped to the end. And so he saw the score and was like devastated apparently, and was like really upset. And his wife messaged me the next day, And she's like, hey, I want you to help me play a prank on my husband. I'm like, okay, what's up? She's like, just send him, I think it was Scandinavia, I can't believe Scandinavia 1x2. And so I went along, I messaged him immediately, not knowing about the mistake from the night before where he saw the score without wanting to. And I thought the prank was that I was watching the World Cup, because I don't watch the World Cup. So I sent him like, dude, I can't believe Scandinavia 1x2. And she messaged me back. A few minutes later, she's like, I already ruined it. I couldn't stop laughing because he was so mad. And then I got really worried. I was like, did you check to make sure that wasn't the actual score before I said it? Because
if he watched the match and that was the score,
he
wouldn't have been popular.
No, I'd be dead. And that's I was like, I didn't know what we were doing. I feel like I should have asked more questions before I volunteered.
That's what soccer does to people, soccer/football.
Yeah, but The Incredibles 2 delayed a whole month so that people can watch soccer, which I guess is important. But, it's out here in the States and making tons of money. So I think they would have been okay if they released it in the UK. But
it was a silly... The games are on during the evening, but like you say, over here, just like if most places in the world, you can just record things and go back to watch it. So I can't imagine there would be any particularly huge problem in the box office at all.
Yeah, I think it would have been fine. I mean, it's tracking right now to be the number 2 movie of the summer.
Wow.
And with Jurassic World looking like the third place, pending any surprises that we don't see coming. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp could suddenly kick up a notch, but if it follows their last one, it won't. And then I guess there's still the chance for those random movies. I mean, Mission Impossible 2, it's Mission Impossible 6, but yeah, but it could make a lot of money. But usually they're modest. They make a decent chunk, but not. They've never taken the summer.
Top tier, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a few surprises out there. A couple movies that I didn't know were coming out this summer that could maybe, if they hit the right audience. I think Hereditary did way better than anyone expected box office wise.
Certainly against budget, yeah.
Yeah, so, and 8th Grade comes out here in 2 weeks, which I'm very excited to see a second time.
Mamma Mia comes out soon.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully that makes money for me.
Yeah, if you don't know, listeners, Matt and I partook in one of my other podcasts, Top 5 Movies, Summer Movie Challenge. And so it was Matt, Corey, Mike, myself, and Craig from Music Musing. We all drafted the summer movies, and we earned points by their box office and their critical acclaim on Metacritic.com. And currently I am winning by a whole lot. Simply because of the Avengers Infinity War. And because Solo did not do as well as either of us expected. I think you and I both thought Solo would make tons of money, and it did not.
I thought the Star Wars brand would carry that to at least sort of 700 to 800 million worldwide, and wow, was I wrong.
Yeah, and there's no way anyone could have predicted it being that low. I mean, if Disney had predicted it, they definitely wouldn't have released it in May. I think that was a huge mistake. That's the first Star Wars film we've got since the Force Awakens in the summer, and it did not pay off. They should have kept it in December, which seems to be their sweet spot, where there's there's no real competition. It's the end of the year. It's been a year since our last Star Wars movie. Here we only had 6 months, and while I didn't have the issues that a lot of people had with Solo, it definitely didn't get people in the box office to even have an opinion about it, and that's shocking.
Exactly. When we spoke about Solo last month, and I'll reiterate that it's a good fun action film. It didn't need to be the best Star Wars film. It didn't need to make $2 billion, but it, as a film and what it brings to the story and just how fun it is, it did deserve a bit more, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure. I wish it had done better. Hopefully it'll have a good home video showing, though, and people give it a chance. Because I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's amazing either, but I don't think it's bad. And I can see why some people might not like it, but I think, if you're just a Star Wars fan, not one of those people who say you're a Star Wars fan but seem to be really toxic, but an actual fan of it, I think you will find a lot of joy in Solo.
Which would be me, and I did.
Yep. But this month, we're going to be talking about 6 movies that Matt and I have seen, as well as maybe a few things that we've watched on our own. If you've never listened to Bloody Awesome Movie Podcast, first off, welcome. We do not spoil these movies. These are reviews just based on our cursory information, no spoilers. At least we try really hard not to.
I don't think we spoiled anything yet, I don't think.
I don't think so, but there's a couple movies on this month's list that I think you could potentially spoil, even if you don't mean to, like just... because, again, what a person defines as a spoiler is different, right? Like, some people don't want to know anything, they don't watch trailers, they don't read anything about the movie, they go in as blind as possible.
Which is good.
Yeah, I tried that for a while, but I like to get to the theater early enough to pick my seats. Because my local theater doesn't have reserved seating, so I like to get there early enough. So I'm going to see the trailers, and that just means I'm going to have to, I'll see the same trailer 16 times before the movie comes out, and then I just kind of accepted that and deal with it. But so if you're a person who likes to go in completely blind, you should probably stop listening unless you've seen all the movies that we're going to talk about.
Agreed.
Otherwise, we will be careful not to spoil endings or any major plot points. Again, some things we might say and incidentally spoil it. I know I've heard people say, referring to a film, the fact that a film has a twist is a spoiler. Just saying, like, blank movie has a twist at the end. So if that's you, I can't promise we won't spoil that type of thing, but we won't spoil specific details about the films.
Yeah, the most we will go into is a plot synopsis, which obviously is intended to not spoil anything, but yeah, it's as spoiler-free as it can be. It may allude to a twist, it may allude that there's moments in it which will shock you or upset you or make you laugh, but, that's what we do here. We will never try and intentionally spoil it, but as JB says, if you want to go in completely blind, then go see the film, come back on and listen as soon as you get back home.
Mm-hmm. And with the movies that we're going to be watching, some of these are going to be still in theaters, and others will already be heading to home video soon. So this is a good way of kind of judging what you missed, and should you bother to rent it from your local establishment or on VOD or however you're watching your movies, and or should you rush out and see it in the theater before it's too late? Because I know for the U.S., finding Adrift in a theater is going to be a lot harder for us than it will be for the U.K. where it just came out. But why don't we get started, Matt? What's the first movie we're going to talk about?
The first movie of this month is Upgrade, directed by Lee Wanell and starring Logan Marshall Green, Betty Gabriel, Harrison Gilbertson, and Melanie Vallejo. And the synopsis is set in the near future, where technology controls nearly every aspect of life. But when Gray, which is Logan Marshall Green, a self-identified technophobe, has his world turned upside down, his only hope for revenge is an experimental computer chip implant called STEM. The first thing I've got to say about this film is I first saw Logan Marshall Green in The Invitation, which was a pretty good thriller horror film a few years back now. And he looked like Revenant Tom Hardy then, and he still looks like Tom Hardy now. So when you watch it, you may get confused that we're not watching Tom Hardy, but he's Grey Trace. He's an analog man in a digital world. Everything is digitalised as it is nowadays. So already you can probably tell where the message in this film is going to be and what the overarching theme is. But as I mentioned, there's a moment in the film where obviously the story takes a drastic change, and it's then where Upgrade kind of changes pace very quickly. This is a violent film. It's engaging. It's quite intelligent, and what I liked about it was it has the kind of classic feel of sci-fi to it, like the throwback feel. But there's something about it that I thought was quite refreshing about Upgrade. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but there's something about it which it kept me very engaged in this film.
Yeah, I first heard about this while I was at South by. I was standing in line to see something, and I heard two guys behind me talking about Upgrade, which it was one of the midnight showing films at South by Southwest. And I skipped all the midnight showings because it was just really late, and I wasn't really familiar with my area, and I was having to also write 4 to 5 reviews every day, so I needed some sleep. So I skipped the midnight things, and but I remembered hearing these guys talk about like how they were really pleasantly surprised by it, and they thought it was really interesting, and they said it got distribution. So when I saw it on our list for the summer movie wager, I was like, okay, cool, it's coming out during the summer. It probably won't come to my theater, though, because we don't usually get a lot of the smaller indie films. So I was really shocked and happy when we did. We actually got it. And so I went off to see it, and I was completely unsure of what I was getting into. I knew it was a sci-fi film. I didn't realize who the lead was until I saw him, and I was like, oh, I know that guy. And I saw The Invitation as well. He was also in Spider-Man Homecoming as the Shocker. And then he's in Prometheus, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I don't know how you feel about Prometheus.
I don't even remember him being in Prometheus.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was just looking at his IMDb. I'm like, oh, I guess he's in a bunch of stuff. But I really loved him in this. And I also really liked The Invitation, too. But I thought he was a really great lead. And I thought what he has to do in this movie is insane. Because it's again, it can't go into too much, but the way the fight scenes are shot, he has to be a certain way that looks unnatural, yet he has to do it naturally, and he nails it. And I was really impressed by the visuals in this film. There was one violent moment early, like the first big action fight sequence, where I exclaimed out loud, just oh my god, because it was so out of nowhere and so violent and
brutal.
Yeah, and for an indie film to be able to pull off those type of practical effects was impressive. And I did feel like it was refreshing. It was completely different than what we've been getting. It had that kind of the old school 80s uber violent movies that you would get from almost B film level of violence, but with some interesting sci-fi stuff in it, and definitely a message, right, that is relevant today, themes that you can pull that you're like, oh, well, that's clearly a message on this or his opinion on that. And I just thought it was a fun movie. I had a really entertaining time with it. I thought narratively he does a really good job of keeping the story interesting, easy to follow, and never quite exactly what you think is happening. Every time you think you have a good grip on it, I feel like it shifts a little. It's not crazy dramatic shifts where it's doesn't make sense. It's just these little oh, I thought they were saying this, but really it was this little thing over here. And I was really impressed when I walked out. I was just like, wow, I really like that movie. So
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It kind of keeps half a step ahead of you. It's not like Alex Garland type style of machinations going on. But the story is like I mentioned, it's an engaging, compelling story. I've heard comparisons, you may have seen this as well, of RoboCop / Death Wish kind of hybrid type film.
Yes, I was saying with that. Totally. When I was saying the 80s action, RoboCop was what was in my head. Totally can see that. And not quite to the level of social commentary, I think, that you get in RoboCop, but there's definitely some commentary being made.
Yeah, I mean, well, absolutely. Who's in control of this world, basically, is a huge kind of thing we look at. But I thought there was also a decent spattering of humour in this film. It didn't always work. It wasn't just full on deep sci-fi, getting entrenched with everything going on and the emotion and the gravity, that they forgot to add any kind of levity in. And I thought there was some pretty decent gags. Most of it comes from Logan Marshall Green. His lead man he's a very snarky lead type character, so he kind of has the majority of those lines. But I think he's very good in it. He's kind of escaped a lot of attention, I think. Logan Marshall Green. Like I said, I didn't even realise he's in Prometheus. The Invitation I only heard of because it was on Netflix. I forgot he was the Shocker in Spider-Man Homecoming. It's not because he's a bad actor, but I mean, I think he's the kind of guy we're just waiting to see break out, I think. So this film can only help him, because I had a blast with this film. It will certainly be in the top echelons of my films of the year, certainly so far. But I just, like you mentioned, it kept me engaged, which is all I want in a film, whether it's a horror, comedy, period drama, whatever. As long as I can sit there and get drawn into the story, that's all I want. And I got that from this. I had some fun with it. I was shocked at it a few times. There's a lot of violence in it, so if you are averse to brutality, then be warned. There is a fair bit in this film, but no, on the whole, I really enjoyed this, and this is a film I only heard of via that fantasy draft. I believe it was Michael who picked my upgrade.
Actually, I think Craig pulled that one.
Pulled that one, but I hadn't heard of it until he'd mentioned it, so I then went to research it, and I was quite looking forward to seeing it, and thankfully my expectations were met and more.
Yeah, I went in slightly apprehensively that it wouldn't be what I wanted it to be, and I didn't really know what I wanted it to be, but it definitely it worked for me in almost every way, and I found the humor very. I am a snarky humor person, so the snarkiness that he does I thought was really well executed, and I laughed a few times for sure. And I am a fan of old school action, like especially martial arts type action, and I thought that was pretty great. And even the way they shoot those sequences are really, really strong. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I think I'm going to end up buying this one when it comes out, because I do think it's something I could just throw on in the background and kind of have on, watch those action sequences, and like work around, you know, those other moments, which are engaging and entertaining the whole time. But, you know, once you know them, you can do other stuff.
Yeah, I can see this building up. I don't say, I'm going to say a cult following type film, because it's never this film isn't going to smash any records. I don't think. It's not going to be acclaimed at the end of the year, rightly or wrongly. It's just going to fly under the radar. But I think it's going to get picked up by movie fans, and it'll be held up as a very decent indie sci-fi film in years going forward.
Yep, I agree. It's funny because we're starting with another film. This film was from South by. It got picked up, got distribution, and is very, very counter-programming to the rest of the summer movies in a lot of ways. And the next movie is also very counter-programming, although this debuted at Sundance and went to South by, which I had tickets to see, and I didn't make it to because they delayed the start thanks to Ready Player One.
John was actually hiding underneath his covers.
I was terrified. No, I did. I got to see this at a critic screening, though, and I think I talked about this last month because I was able to see it last month.
Yes, you alluded to it and teased.
But I knew you weren't going to be able to. So we're going to look at Hereditary, directed by Ari Aster, also written by, and this is his debut feature film, which is definitely something to note. Stars Toni Collette, Millie Shapiro, Gabriel Byrne, Alex Wolff, and I really think the only name that we have to mention outside of those four is not there. She is Ann Dowd. Ann Dowd should be way higher on the list on the credits, in my opinion. But after the family matriarch passes away, a grieving family is haunted by tragic and disturbing occurrences and begin to unravel dark secrets. That is about the most ambiguous plot synopsis ever, and it is well deserved because it is a movie. Even if you've seen the trailer, I don't think you truly know what you're getting into, other than a horror movie. And it is listed as a drama horror mystery on IMDb, which I find interesting because there's definitely some drama. I took my 14-year-old daughter with me to see this at her first. This was the first critic screening I've taken her to, and we both loved it. There were people behind me. So one of them was a critic. I don't know which one, if it was the guy or the girl. And honestly, I'm not sure which one screamed a few times during the movie. And I'm not sure which one said F this movie when it ended. But that was my experience. And I was in a very small crowd. I think maybe 15 people. I really wish I'd gone back to see this in the theater with a normal, like, full-size crowd to hear how people reacted. This movie I saw almost a month ago. I think it is a month ago. And I still have strong, vivid visuals in my head from this movie as it has just buried itself into my psyche. And I think Toni Collette deserves an Academy Award nomination for this film. I am severely impressed with Alex Wolff. And if you like horror and you've skipped Hereditary for some reason, you owe it to yourself to go watch this movie. Now, it's not, when I say do you like horror, I don't mean one specific type of horror, because this isn't going to be mainstream populist like slasher flick. It is not blood and gore. This is psychological and other things, but definitely psychological. But it's a brilliant film. There's so much here if you're a film person to appreciate, like the use of light, the use of sound. I mean, just it's such a brilliant film in so many ways to me. I don't get any negative criticism, although there have been some. I loved it, and while it's necessary to note this movie is getting compared to Matt's favorite film, The Exorcist. Matt does not agree, but I do think you have some positive things to say about it.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting you mentioned the audience reaction, because that's something I will mention. I'll leave it till the end of this particular review because, wow, I have some things to say about that. But in terms of The Exorcist, yes, it is my favourite film for many reasons. And in my review, I listed there's many similarities that between these films that there are the images which stick with you. They look great, they sound great, they're fantastically acted. So when you list them together, you think, well, that's where the comparisons start, and surely that carries on. But it didn't. To me, it's not on the same level, and I mean that with no bias whatsoever, because I'm not I'm not blinkered. I can see flaws in everything. To me, it didn't hit that same level of The Exorcist, but this was still a very, very good horror film. There is a brilliant mix, I think, of horror, drama, mystery, and thriller, and what's even better is they blend it so well together. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like four different genres fighting to become the prevalent genre. It's what I find about this film is it's kind of like the equivalent of having a shotgun pressed to your head, and you can hear the trigger very slowly being pressured and then taken off again. You're just sitting there gripping for the most part, because the film starts fairly quickly, and by that I mean that it doesn't take long to get into the crux of what's happening and for the tension to ramp up, and the tension is what keeps this film going, because like you mentioned, Toni Collette is superb in this film. She really channels Shelley Duvall in The Shining, I think, with how she acts and how she comes across. But if she doesn't get any kind of recognition, or at least if her name's not even in the mix for a nomination come next year, then the Academy needs to really look at what it considers a fantastic performance, because everything she brings to this story is just smacks of genuine and authenticity. At no point does it feel like she's acting or hamming it up, if you will. No, and I enjoyed Alex Wolff. Millie Shapiro is creepy as anything. Yes. In this film, but yeah, like John said, there are images in this film which will absolutely, they will haunt you. There's moments. It's very hard to talk about this film without going into any detail, but it grips you, it suffocates you and strangles you. Now, there are parts during the film which are divisive, and I know that myself and Joby don't fully agree on certain parts of the film, and that is what I had in my screening. It was this film. This is the worst film I've ever seen in the cinema with an audience, and that's not the film. That's the audience I saw it with. It was unbelievable. There were people talking, like shouting at the screen throughout the film. Jesus. Openly, and this again, there's no spoilers. Openly laughing because you know what some people are like, and just making it just an awful experience. And as the film went on and on and on, the people were talking and shouting and screaming at the cinema, at the screen even more, and it just was the worst experience I've ever had in a film, but in a cinema. But that isn't detriment to the film's quality. That's just the absolute vagrants who are in my screen. But the film, if you like horror films, go out and watch it, because this is the real deal. But what I will say is, when you're told this is the scariest film of all time, it's the greatest horror film of all time. On those warnings, I would temper your expectations slightly. Yes. If you expect it to be the greatest of all time, but do believe the hype, because this is a fabulous horror film.
Yeah, hyperbole is a real thing when it comes to like movies like this, where people
Thanks to social media as well.
Yeah, it's easy to say it's the scariest of all time. That is obviously very subjective. Don't go in expecting to be blown away, but go in prepared to be scared. And this isn't a spoiler. The very first thing you see in the movie is an obituary. It's white text on a black screen, and it's an obituary. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie start that way. And to me, that immediately sets the tone of this film. Like, we're dealing with loss and so much more. And that's, like you said, it's hard to talk about this film in any detail and it not be a type of spoiler. The trailers do a pretty good job of just kind of showing you the mood and tone, but not revealing narrative. So if you're one, maybe you're not sure how you feel about horror, watch the trailer. If the trailer's too much for you, maybe sit this one out.
I'm glad you mentioned how the kind of visual, because what the trailer shows you is moments in the film, but what it doesn't show you is how just well crafted this film is. Some of the shots in this film are unbelievable, just transitional shots or just general visuals, cinematography wise, are superb to look at. So it's not just something which will have you run into the bathroom a few times. It also looks the part, and the score is nasty. So
yeah,
every sense it can, other than smell, which actually depends on your tolerance for horror films, but it will attack every sense. And if you are of a nervous disposition or just don't like horror films, this will mess you up.
Yeah, I concur. Definitely,
it didn't feel like shock for shock. Just for the sake of it, though, it all felt organic to the story. I think for the most part.
Agreed. I thought it was great. I've heard a few friends criticize some of the choices made late in the film, but I won't discuss what. But I have heard some mixed reviews on the end. I
was one of them.
Yeah, and I liked how it ended. I don't think it's perfect or anything necessarily at the end, but I've seen movies end way worse, I guess, and so
absolutely.
I was content. But and it should note this is an A24 film, and I do tend to like them. However, The Witch, which came out I think 3 years ago, was another A24 horror film that got a lot of praise critically that I've not been able to get into. I think there's some really great stuff in the movie. Like it's the costuming's great, the setting's great, the casting's great, but the story and the ending I really just did not care for. But so I'm not a complete A24 fanboy, although I do tend to like what they've done. But just for my own peace of mind, I feel like I gotta disclose that. But all right, that's Hereditary. What's up next?
Next, after Hereditary, is a reimagining of a movie that was already reimagined. It's Ocean's 8, directed by Gary Ross, and starring, what a cast, Sandra Bullock, Cate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Mindy Kaling, Sarah Paulson, Aquafina, Rihanna, Helena Bonham Carter, and Richard Armitage is in there. And this is Debbie Ocean. Sandra Bullock gathers an all-female crew to attempt an impossible heist at New York City's yearly Met Gala. So we all know the Ocean's trilogy: Steven Soderbergh, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and the who's who of the acting family back then. This is, as we said, it's now been changed up. It's an all-female cast, which if you don't like that, sucks to be you. But what a talented cast! It's a very diverse cast, and I like the fact that they've gone this way because it's tied in with the original trilogy. That's what the original Ocean's trilogy. There's Easter eggs all throughout. There's so many cameos, and the film starts very decent. I think it's got a really good first half when the band's getting together, and we get to meet all of the characters and what their specific set of skills are. And when these characters are played by, again, Cate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Helena Bonham Carter, and it's Sarah Paulson. It's just set up for some fantastic moments. Anne Hathaway, I think, she's the VIP of this film. I think she's marvelous. Sandra Bullock she's Sandra Bullock levels of good in this film. She just has the chops to pull off the George Clooney type role, if you will. So well. Helena Bonham Carter's great. Cate Blanchett is good. James Corden appearing is a massive no-no because I can't stand the guy.
Oh.
But I really don't like James Corden. I've mentioned it before. There's a campaign in the UK for him to stay out there in the States, but
man,
that's a story for another time. But cast aside, because it's a cast that needs no introduction, I think the first half's very good. I think it wavers in the second half. I think it falls apart slightly because I don't think the writing's sharp enough to remain consistently good throughout. It's a very slick looking film, as you'd expect. It doesn't always work. It's a lot of fun. There's some good fun, and the chemistry, between the actresses works for me. So a lot does work, but crucially, I think the writing lets it down, and some of the moments that happen along the way are slightly contrived, I think. But in terms of the Ocean's franchise, I think it holds up extremely well compared to the other three.
Well, Gary Ross definitely tries to follow the Soderbergh formula for these movies. And it's definitely clear that it's not Soderbergh doing it, but it's it's in the vein, it's in the ballpark. It's not as
he
good.
produced it.
Yes, he did, but I mean, as far as like the actual structure and stuff, because Soderbergh established a very interesting structure that he used in the Ocean's films. I haven't seen Ocean's 12 or 13, but I hear 12 is very different than 11.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But he reused that formula in Logan Lucky, almost exactly. Like the way he tells the story is almost identical to the Ocean story, and it is a heist movie as well. And you see it here, and so if you've seen those films, there are definitely elements that are predictable, but it's enjoyable. I had a really good time with this movie. I brought my wife with me. We laughed. We enjoyed the film. I definitely, there's definitely problems, and I agree. I think the first half is the strongest part, but I often feel that way with heist movies. I love the team building sequences. They're a lot of times the most fun, and the heist itself is there. It works. It's predictable to a degree, but enjoyable, predictable. I've heard. I think the Slash Filmcast guys said this. That do you think it's called Ocean's 8 so they can do a trilogy and not overlap any of the numbers? So it's Ocean's 8, 9, 10, and then you'll have 11, 12, 13. And that seems likely. And considering this movie's done very well at the box office, and it's one of my picks this year. For the summer draft, so
yes.
I'm pretty happy with it. It's doing well. It's critically it's fine, and money wise, it's done better than I think a lot of people expected.
I think in terms of the numbering of the films, the film ties in well with the original Ocean's trilogy. Chronologically, 8, 9, and 10 wouldn't work, I don't think, because of obviously what we know about the story and what the story tells us in the film. But it could be. But I know they are setting. I know Sandra Bullock has said they are interested in doing a sequel, and I think she said that before the film was released anyway. But if there was a sequel released, I think the best thing I could say about the film was I'd definitely go and watch a sequel because I was entertained by this film. Yes, it's predictable, but So were some of the parts of the Ocean's films.
Yeah.
And I'd happily go and see this band get back together again. And I will watch pretty much anything that Sandra Bullock is in. Helena Bonham Carter, the superb Anne Hathaway, Kate Blanchett, anything they're in.
I'll say, I also thought Anne Hathaway kind of steals the show. Mainly, she gets to do a lot of the comedy in the movie.
Yes.
Her character, she's playing against type, which was great. But the surprise to me was how strong Sarah Paulson was with these other women. Because while I've always thought Sarah Paulson a great actress, she's from American Horror Story. She did the O.J. Simpson TV series, and she's done a few movies. But I really thought with this cast, she is not the least known. I would say Aquafina and Rihanna are the least celebrated actresses in the film.
Yes.
But I think when you look at the big five, Paulson is right in there, and she's crushing it in this movie. And I thought she really did a good job of like standing next to Sandra Bullock, or standing next to Anne Hathaway, or standing next to Kate Blanchett, and being able to be Sarah Paulson, like not being overshadowed or anything. And I was really impressed with her. Mindy Kaling, I wish got a little more to do in the film, but the moment she has, I think she does a really good job. She's really charming in this film, and that's a lot of times not the character she's played. Like in The Office, she was always supposed to be a little obnoxious, and I thought here I was actually like rooting for her, and I'm like, yeah, you deserve this. You deserve to have a moment where you're not like annoying and obnoxious. But I really had a great time with this film. Like I am not a super huge fan of the original Ocean's trilogy, but I love Ocean's 11. And I wasn't prompted enough to watch the other films, but I was really late to the party on it too. I didn't see it until a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was kind of told to skip the others. Although I'm kind of wanting to watch 12 because I've heard what 12 is, and now I kind of want to see it because it sounds so much different than the 11. But 8 definitely feels like a female version of 11, but done really, really well. And I think it's impossible to look at this movie and not compare it to the female Ghostbusters because of the internet backlash that the female Ghostbusters movie had. While I had issues with that movie, it wasn't because it was an all-female cast. My biggest issue with the film was that they made it a reboot, and I think they could have built it into a continuation. simply by taking a throwaway line from, I think, Ghostbusters 1 or 2, where they talk about franchising the Ghostbusters. That's all you needed. This was a new franchise set in a different city. Instead of New York, put it in Chicago or something like that, and let it be that all the stuff from the 80s happened, and this is just a new branch. And I think you have a better movie than what you ended up with, story-wise, because there's so many cheesy things in that film, like how they get their logo from the graffiti artist, like all of that stuff was just too much, you know. But I thought there were some good performances in that film. Where Ocean's 8, I think not making it a straight reboot and having it that she's Danny's sister, and that, you know, this runs in the family, we're all criminals, that whole kind of running gag that goes through the film. It adds it added some backstory to her, even though she's never mentioned, I don't think, in the Ocean's movies.
No.
So it's like, well, what happened with, you know, why have you never been discussed? Because they sure talk about Danny a whole lot in this film, but
yes, they do. I suppose you can't really say too much, but they do talk about it. I think this film stands well on its own, though, as Ghostbusters.
It does,
because I mean, I've mentioned in this film there's so many Easter eggs and throwbacks and callbacks, but I think if you didn't know it's connected somehow, and you just saw this as a female heist film, or just a heist film, doesn't matter if it's female, a heist film, I think it stands well by itself. Whereas the Ghostbusters film, I think I had a lot more fun with that than most people did, but that does rely heavily on the brand. Whereas I know Ocean's 8, they could have called it something else, but as it is a tie-in and a reimagining, it needed that. But I think it stands well on its own. I agree about Mindy Kaling. One of my main drawbacks on the film was some of the supporting cast didn't get as much time to shine as others. But my first question is, what did you think of Rihanna's performance?
I liked it. I've only seen her in... I saw her in Valerian, City of a Thousand Planets, which I don't blame her for that, though. That movie was just an atrocity overall, minus a few awesome sequences, but overall that movie was really, really bad. And I feel like I saw her in something else. I didn't see Battleship, so it wasn't that.
She was in something else recently, I think, but I'm just still stuck on Valerian at the minute. But I only asked because in the lead up to the film, there were a lot of people sort of calling out Rihanna being in the film. Could they have not got somebody with more pedigree, blah blah blah? But I thought she was okay with what she did. She was one of the characters who didn't really get an awful lot to do, but I think she was okay with what she did.
I'll tell you, Aquafina surprised me though. I didn't really know about her until Oceans, and she's going to be in the Crazy Rich Asians, I think, is what's coming out this August. She's one of the lead characters. My local Regal has been hammering that film a lot, as in terms of like they have a special like Regal trailer where they're like, hey, Regal audiences, blah blah blah, and so I've seen that way too many times. But she's gonna be in that too, and I don't know if you know, she's a rapper also. She does like comedic rapping. And
I know that now, yes.
Yeah, she's really funny, man. Like I watched a few of her music videos on YouTube, and it was cracking me up before Oceans came out. And so I kind of went in already thinking she was funny, and I liked her. I thought she didn't get a lot to do, but the few moments she has, she's right there with her. And Helena Bonham Carter, I thought, played against type also, because she's never been like so spastic, where she's not she's like lacking self-esteem, which is definitely not. Usually she's overly confident, even when maybe she shouldn't be. It still kind of like reeks like this, you know, arrogance about her. Even like if you look at Fight Club, her character is broken and damaged, but she puts on this front of being confident and being sure of herself. And seeing her play that kind of twitchy, down on her luck character, I thought was really, really cool. And I thought it was really fun. I had a really good time with that movie. I definitely recommend it if you just want it's a good popcorn movie, right? Like, it's not gonna blow your mind or anything like that, but it's enjoyable, super fun, some really great performances, and again, it's a considering that it's a reimagining of a franchise that was already up and down, I think they did a pretty solid job with Ocean's.
Yeah, I mean, the original Ocean's 11 was a reimagining of the 1960s, the Rat Pack version.
Yep.
Which had the coolest cats in the world in it.
Yeah.
But I agree with that. Sometimes you just, it's not counterintuitive to say that sometimes you do just want a film where you can go in and enjoy. We have mentioned there's plot holes. You've mentioned there's things that don't work. But overall, this is a film that you can just go down, grab your biggest box of butter, popcorn, or whatever is your sin, and just enjoy yourself. It isn't perfect. I don't think it ever said it was. I'm sure they aimed for it, but it isn't. But it's still an awful lot of fun. I mean, I have to say, this was directed by Gary Ross, who directed probably JB's great favourite film, Seabiscuit. Is that correct?
It is, yes. I didn't know that he directed that. That's funny.
Yes, I mentioned that for the fourth show in a row because John hates horses. And just finally on this film, god damn, I love Anne Hathaway.
Yeah. Let's move on from that statement. I think that's a good way to transition as you tag me in, sir, for our next movie, which is Tag. Tag is based on a true story of a small group of former classmates who organize an elaborate annual game of tag that requires some to travel all over the country. Directed by Jeff Tomsic, stars Jeremy Renner, Ed Helms, Jake Johnson, John Hamm, Lil Rel Howery, which I don't know, how are you not putting Hannibal Buress earlier on this list? Hannibal Buress, Annabelle Wallace, and Isla Fisher. A few other people show up in cameos. Steve Berg is the bartender who I recognize from stuff. Rashida Jones shows up very late in the film. I don't think that's a spoiler. Thomas Middleditch has a very small part, but if you're a fan of Silicon Valley like myself, he is the lead guy from that show. I went in apprehensive about Tag. I'm a huge fan of John Hamm at this point. And I like Jake Johnson from what I've seen. Even like I saw The Mummy last year, whatever. I thought Jake Johnson was pretty good in Jurassic World, even though he didn't get a whole lot to do. The first one, not Fallen Kingdom. I've watched episodes of New Girl. Not a huge fan of the show, but I find him funny at times. Ed Helms I have soured on over the years. I think the more I see him, the more I'm kind of like, I'm done with your shtick. Like, just go away. I've been a huge advocate for Hannibal Buress in a lot of other films. I thought in Daddy's Home 1, he was the highlight of that movie. He made it enjoyable for me. He plays, kind of a weird character there. He's the cop in Neighbors, and I think in Neighbors 2. And he's, even in Spider-Man Homecoming, he's the gym coach who gets some of the funnier lines when he's interacting with the video from Captain America and stuff. And I generally like Hannibal Buress in most movies like that. And then Jeremy Renner I like a lot of times. Overall, though, I found this film kind of boring. And I found myself more interested in the true story and wishing I were watching a documentary about the actual guys who do this. I don't dislike this film. I a lot of the jokes fell flat for me. There's a lot of physical humor that I didn't find to be that funny. A lot of times I feel like physical humor, if it's exaggerated and cartoonish, doesn't work for me in my own taste, and a lot of it was that. And I thought it was odd that they seemed to borrow a Guy Ritchie element from his take on Sherlock Holmes with the slow motion action sequences narrated by the person doing the action, which was cool, but like a weird thing to borrow, I thought. Especially since Guy Ritchie's kind of currently on people are, not loving Guy Ritchie right now. So
he's in a slump.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my take on Tag.
I've got Tag in the fantasy draft, so I'm hoping this becomes a juggernaut at the box office, but it's not going to. But yeah, I agree. It's a thin story that's stretched out for a bit too long. I actually didn't mind this film, to be honest. It's repetitive and it's just silliness throughout. But I ended up being quite good fun. There's a fairly sort of nice kind of feeling that you can take away with it, all about friendship and adult life and sort of being adults but really wanted to just be kids like we used to be. So I took that from it and it kind of made me think, man, I wish I could just go back to playing like I did in the playground. But the comedy, when it doesn't work, it really clangs. When it does work, it works. But yeah, I think they kind of dragged this story out for far too long, especially when they got such a good cast in there. Jeremy Renner, I like comedic Jeremy Renner. I also like how they pretty much typecast him as the action, the tough guy of the film. He's getting married in the film, so he's the main man. Everybody wants to get at him. So that's the kind of. I think the original story was a lot better, but I thought it's got such a good. Like I said, the cast is good. Ed Helms, I can see why you may have sort of gone south on him. It's funny you mentioned Jake Johnson because Annabelle Wallace is in this, who is also in The Mummy, so it just gave me horrible
that's right.
flashbacks during this film. I like John Hamm. Lil Rel Harry, who was an excellent part of Get Out, is also in this film. Isla Fisher, who I remember seeing Isla Fisher about 20 years ago in an Australian soap we got over here.
Oh,
she's gone on to do bigger and better things than that. But
Now You See Me.
Yes, I wouldn't say this is a wasted opportunity. I think I think the movie itself is just a throwaway, basically, based on a cool story. It could have done with being a lot shorter. It could have done with having another revision over the script and some of the gags. But that said, I did have a bit of fun with it, and I think the overarching spirit of the film was what I enjoyed more than the film itself.
See, that's interesting because we've flipped on that with other movies in the past where the theme of like A Wrinkle in Time I think was a good example of one where all of the negative things about the movie I was able to ignore because I was so latched onto the theme that I could overlook the bad parts, and that didn't happen here. I do see it and I do agree, and I think I really felt that way with John Hamm, but there's so many things that like they're claiming this makes them really good friends, but even in I guess it would get into spoilers. I don't know. I question a lot about like the story that were presented. Now I don't know about the real life guys enough to know how much they actually like play tag, in their rules. But I was definitely a little disappointed with pieces of this film. I wanted to think it was really funny, and there were moments like Isla Fisher is like over the top competitive. I thought she was funny, even if it was a bit large at times. Like her performance went a little over the top, but John Hamm, I just find John Hamm to be super charming, and part of it isn't because of his characters that he plays. It's he does Doug Loves Movies podcast like way more than you would think because he's John Hamm. He's the guy from Mad Men. He's like this charming,
consistently good.
Yeah, and he's handsome as all get out. Like, he doesn't need to do a live podcast where he answers movie trivia questions. But, one, he's good at it. He actually knows movies, and that makes me like him. Two, he's, like, a normal guy. And so I have that, like, attachment to him, too. Is, like, I know not only is he a really great actor who's charming, but he's also, like, a really cool guy in real life, and that makes me like him all the more. So I think it's definitely, I am biased towards him. Like, I think he wins me over instantly when he's in a film, and I liked his character in the movie. I thought what he got to do was minimal. Ed Helms and Renner, Ed Helms is the lead for sure.
Yeah,
and I think that's maybe part where the story falls for me, because he's spastic. I thought he was a little more subtle at times in this film than he's been in some other things. Like, if you look at his performances in the Hangover movies, most of his funny moments are him yelling and freaking out, and like being...
Or losing a tooth.
Yeah, or losing a tooth. But that, I don't know. There's some cool moments. I thought there were some good visuals in the film. I was really disappointed with Hannibal Buress. I think this was his weakest role, and it's one of his bigger roles, but I every joke he laid fell flat for me, especially the one that was in the trailer. So technically a spoiler, but it was in the trailer. Renner locks himself in a kitchen and slides a little piece of paper out, and they're like, "What is it? A butt or is it a penis?" And then he says it's ice cream because he knows I'm lactose intolerant. He's taunting me. It's just like, are you kidding? Like, that's not funny to me. Like, I don't know. I know I've seen Hannibal Buress live, like, do stand up. He is a brilliant, funny guy. And a lot of his jokes just felt like he was playing like a dumb character, and I didn't get why. Like, all of them are like successful, smart people, except for Jake Johnson, and his character, not the actual person.
Yeah.
All of them are like really successful. Have like, one's a dentist, one is has like he's the CEO of a big, or CFO or something of a big company. Renner has like his own chain of like gyms or something. Like, they're all supposed to be like successful people, and Hannibal Buress' character is set up to be emotionally challenged, I guess, because we first see him at his psychiatrist, being jealous over his girlfriend, but it doesn't mean he's stupid, and a lot of his jokes just come off as him kind of being detached, and I don't know, that's weak writing, not necessarily Buress' fault, but it just
took the question out of my mouth that I was going to say, would you put that down to the performance or the writing? I would say the writing, but I think you've disagreed as well.
But that's disappointing to me because I know what Buress can do. I've seen him be brilliant in other movies, And I don't know. He felt a little checked out to me in this. He is in Blockers too, but he's got a really small part in Blockers. But even I thought what he got to do in Blockers was better than what he got to do in Tag.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a film which I really wanted to enjoy, not just because I have it in the draft, but I did enjoy it for the most part. But like I said, it just feels a bit throwaway. The original story is a lot more charming. It's a lot more fun. The original story actually has more people involved in it, which makes it even more fun.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the best thing I can say is the fact that it's based on a true story is actually just awesome. There are people out there who do this annually.
Yeah,
as
I
a
agree.
film, it could have worked. But it's not the worst film of the year, but it could have worked better. I think it could have been trimmed. They could have done, like I mentioned, to revise the story, chop and change some of the roles, give more people more to do, give certain people less to do, make it funnier. Because you can make a film endearing, but when it's clearly meant to be funny, make it funny. And I know that is a subjective term, but there are ways of being funny which can appeal to more demographics and more types of people without having to resort to toilet jokes or genitalia jokes, which I laugh at the best of times, but it don't always work. And I think in this film, the comedy, the writing severely lets the movie down, because it really, with a good message and a good feeling, plus good comedy and good performances, had we had that, this could have been an excellent summer comedy. I think for me, it just ends up being an average summer comedy, which just is there if you've seen everything else.
Yeah, mine's just a little less than average, but I still don't think it's like a horrible movie or anything. I just wasn't. I wanted to laugh more, and I wanted to be more engaged, and I did check out a couple of times, not majorly. And again, I do think this is on my own taste and preferences, but there were a lot of it just fell flat for me, and yeah, it happens. But I think next up, we're going a little bigger.
Yeah, this is a film that really wanted to keep you entertained and engaged, and I think we may have different opinions on this. It is the mighty, apparently, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom from director J.A. Bayona, and starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Chris Pratt, Ted Levine, Toby Jones, James Cromwell, Rafe Spall, Daniela Pineda, Justice Smith, and the god himself, Jeff Goldblum. It is the sequel to the, excuse the pun, but the monstrously successful Jurassic World, a film that I think exceeded every expectation that the studio would have had in it. Jurassic World for me was a decent popcorn film. Looking past that, it's just a decent movie. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, the plot synopsis is it's set 4 years after the Jurassic World theme park was closed down. Owen, Chris Pratt, and Claire, Bryce Dallas Howard, they will have to return to Isla Nublar to save the dinosaurs when they learn that a once dormant volcano on the island is active and threatening to extinguish all life there. And along the way, Owen sets out to find Blue, the awesome raptor from the first film, and discovers a conspiracy that could disrupt the natural order of the entire planet, because life has found a way again. Now, I thought Jurassic World was pretty good. I preferred Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and I think that's where the main part where we differ here. I thought this was a better film than the first one. Partly it's because I like J.A. Bayona as a director. I loved what he did with The Orphanage, and I thought A Monster Calls was pretty darn good. I like what he brought to the film. I like the fact that they tried to take it into different directions. Again, no spoilers, of course, but as is the kind of the norm or the trend with these kind of franchise films now, there is the kind of vogue thing where you have to take it in a new, interesting direction. We saw it with The Last Jedi, maybe Infinity War tried that as well. Lots of franchise films are trying something different now to shock the audience. Jurassic World didn't really do that. It certainly tried to, but it did bring up some promising questions that if they can just tweak up the problems of this film, then the third film could be something very decent. This film is fun. I found it to be exciting at times. Visually, it looked excellent. There was one moment which I know JB was manipulated by and didn't like it.
I didn't say I didn't like it. I just felt it was manipulated.
Put in for, and I agree to a point. But what this film has, though, is an abundance of extreme cheese and some real naff moments. There's bits in this where my eyes almost fell out of my face because I was rolling them so hard. Because it's a tendency for all of these films where it's convenience just takes over, but it's not even convenience. It's like the king of conveniences. But it just happens too many times. It's the tropes that are well used, just when you know they're coming. But what it does get right is I think is a fantastic first half of the film. Certainly the first act of the film was excellent. I liked what they did later on in the film, but I know that lots of people didn't. So over to you.
Well, I want to say first, I listened to the Slash Filmcast review of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and I was a big fan of Jurassic World. I definitely see the flaws of Jurassic World, but I had a blast watching that movie. And partly because I am a huge Jurassic Park fan. I love the first film. It is one of my favorite. It's literally in my top 5 right now of all-time movies. It's one that I can rewatch at any time, and I always enjoy it. Yep. Yeah, I love it. My editor for BurkeReviews.com, David, is also a huge Jurassic Park fan, and we have that kind of connection where we're both like obsessed over Jurassic Park. I think part of it, we were really big fans of dinosaurs, and then Jurassic Park came, and it gave us this like excitement of possibility of like, and it's also fear because like the movie's lesson is don't do this, but at the same time, how awesome would it be? Like if someone all of a sudden announced today that there was a Jurassic Park for real, like they've cloned dinosaurs, it would be so tempting to go. I would be terrified, but I would want to go. You know, like we went when we were in New York for Tribeca, we went to the Natural History Museum just so we could see the dinosaur bones because that's like we're so fascinated by it. And Jurassic World coming back and being fun and having Chris Pratt, who I just love. I've been a big Chris Pratt fan. Parks and Recreation, I love him as Andy Dwyer. Love Guardians of the Galaxy. So he just wins me over. He's so charming. Even though his character, Owen Grady, I think, right?
Yes.
Poorly written character, has almost nothing to do in either movie in terms of actual like plot structure. Yeah. He's just, he's great at everything. That's it. He's always right. Nothing, whatever. But he's so charming. It just works. And the highlight of this film for me, without any hesitation, is the relationship of Blue and Owen, which makes me kind of feel bad for Bryce Dallas Howard. I don't know what they're doing with her character. They don't seem to know what they're doing with her character because what she's doing in this movie makes no sense from what she did in the first movie. It is a huge leap in logic, in my opinion, and a lot of, you could say that for almost everything people do in this film. There's so many problems. I do recommend, if you've seen this film and you want like a spoiler heavy review, check out the Slash Filmcast episode. I think the guys do a really great job of pointing out flaws with it and also pointing out some good things. It's a little bit divided of what their overall opinion of the film is, but I think you get a lot of good bits of information about it, and they brought me over because I didn't really look at the direction from J.A. Bonoa. I've only seen A Monster Calls. I think I brushed The Orphanage off as like a B movie, not realizing that it's supposed to be really great.
Very good film.
So I'm going to be going into that in the near future, but I've not seen it. So I loved A Monster Calls. So I actually was emotionally hit real hard, and I love the art style of that movie so much. So I was excited for this. And I think my love of the franchise, even though I don't love Lost World, I don't love Jurassic Park 3, I do find moments in each of those films that I enjoy. And that's the same with Fallen Kingdom. I don't think it's as good. None of them have been as good as Jurassic Park. And while I had more fun with Jurassic World, I do think in hindsight, and especially listening to the reviews and listening to you talk, I do think that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom might be a better movie overall, but the errors that are there are so glaring that it's hard to see it as a better film on reaction. I think you really have to look at the film and think on it and think back to it and see why it's a better film, or maybe be a little more familiar with the direction to see like the craftsmanship that goes into this movie, the lighting, the use, the look of the film in general. And this film does something that the other films haven't done, and it pushes the story forward finally. I think it's been kind of sitting in the same place since Jurassic Park, and this one starts to finally move it over. It's almost like we've been watching a glacier slowly moving, and now
Yes.
it's finally been hit by something to get the ball rolling. And this third film has so much potential, which will be the sixth in the whole franchise, third in the Jurassic World trilogy, if they nail it. But I am so afraid that they're gonna botch it, especially because Trevorrow is supposed to be back in the helm, and I question his quality of direction. So
I think I was one of the only people who thought the Book of Henry was okay, even though it was a hodgepodge mesh of genres and styles. I didn't mind the story itself. It was absolute tripe writing, but I quite enjoyed it for the most part. You'd spot on there with the third film, because with Trevorrow coming back, this could be a case of going back to what made Jurassic World so successful, which was that just full-on entertainment value. So they could really sort of go for a full-on blowout in the third part of this trilogy and lose kind of what Fallen Kingdom set up. And I loathe to use the word depth, but the kind of depth and direction that it could potentially go in. You know, there is a fantastic film that could be made out of this, but the flaws in Fallen Kingdom are they're there. Whenever the dinosaurs aren't on screen, the film falls flat pretty much. But the stock villains, if you will, the bad guys, are just, I mean, it's telegraphed immediately. It's obvious as soon as you see the hairlines on them, but they aren't very well written. As you mentioned, that nobody's particularly very well written. So the bad guys are stock and there's nothing to them. Some of the moments in the film are just stretch. I don't want to say stretch credibility because they've got dinosaurs, but like some of the prices paid. The Indoraptor, again, not a spoiler, he's in the trailer. I thought he was awesome, but you know, it's another new dinosaur for another new film. What I will say though is the opening of this film is spectacular. I thought the first 5 minutes or so is just full of tension, and I thought what a fantastic way to set the film up. And then going into the first act, we're on the island. I thought that was played really, really well, and it looked spectacular as well. It could have quite easily just turned into a violently bad-looking CGI fest, but I think they really pulled off the visuals well. There's a manipulative scene in there, which JB felt was pushed in there, which almost made me die inside a little bit when I saw it.
It had the same reaction for me, but I think my cynicism,
past it,
I was just like, that's mean. First of all, the setup of it doesn't even really make complete sense to me, but more so, it was like, that was cruel, you know. But my friend David pointed out, I think one of the guys on Slash Film said something similar. Like, if you're a big fan of Jurassic Park, this movie's going to tug at the heartstrings at times, because a lot is changing from things that we were familiar with from Jurassic Park and in Lost World and in Jurassic Park 3 and in Jurassic World. Yeah. This movie, takes part of it. The premise that you said, there's a volcano on the island now erupting. So everything that we've seen from that island is going to be altered in some way. And
we see that in the trailer as well.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, it's going to tug at the heartstrings for sure. And that scene, it's definitely, the more I reflect on that, it is like, it's kind of devastating. Like, that whole idea, like the island being changed, and it's you can't go back. You can't go back to the island. It's gonna be changed, and that's kind of crushing. It's like taking part of my, my fondness of the old memory. Granted, it is a fictional island, so it's not like it mattered, but yeah.
I went to see Jurassic Park when it came out of the cinema because I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was a kid. I loved dinosaurs, and when you put it like that, it kind of takes you back to being 9, 10, 11, 12, however old we were at the time when it came out, and you do kind of think of seeing the wonder of seeing this world brought to life on screen and the direction it's taken now. But I think it's a necessary direction. There's only I've mentioned it with films like Alien. There's only so many times can you pull the same shtick before it just gets boring. And I know Prometheus tried something different, but it didn't work because it just wasn't well executed. But there's only so many ways you can do it. The Last Jedi's tried changing things up, and you see how that's gone.
Yeah.
This is taking things in a different direction, and now it all depends on that crucial final film. But the one question I will ask, actually, in the third film, do you think they'll finally manage to get the original gang back together? Because they've had Sam Neill, they've had Jeff Goldblum turn up. Do you think they'll get the band together?
That would be really interesting. I at least want a cameo, if nothing else. But, yeah, I hope so. It's questionable. Where do you go from here? Like, would it make sense to still have Owen and I don't even remember Bryce Dallas Howard's character name. Claire. Would it even make sense to have them anymore? Like at the conclusion, it's debatable that you need them. Like you might just need it to be new characters in general, or maybe Return of the Guard, bring back the old people, like you mentioned.
There could be another. Like you mentioned, there could be another stretch in credibility that they're suddenly now the president and the first lady or something.
Oh, that would be interesting. Who knows? It should be noted, Trevorrow, while he did not direct this movie, he did write. He has got co-credit for the writing, so he's had his hands in all of the films, and so hopefully he knows where he's going with it, and that the third one will, go this direction that it looks like it's going, and we'll get a good finale to this franchise. Hopefully, true finale too. I hope the next one is the end. And we can walk away from it from there. But I think that's... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it offers enough interesting threads to create something compelling. It's not perfect. It's still fun. It's a bit darker. But crucially, the dino, or crucially for us, but maybe not for the stars, the dinos are still the all-stars of the film.
Yeah.
But if you love Jurassic Park, I think you're absolutely going to eat this up. And the casual fans will enjoy the ride. But... like we've mentioned, the flaws really do prevent this from becoming like top tier in the Jurassic Park world.
And I want to point out too, because there's I'm not a fan of the Fast and the Furious franchise, nor am I a fan of the Transformers franchise, and I think most of the fans could argue, the first if you watch Fast and the Furious, it is very different from every other movie in that franchise.
This is Transformers almost, yeah.
Yeah, Transformers is taken fairly serious in the first movie, and then. My God, they've retconned every movie. I mean, with the new Bumblebee movie coming out, they now have been... Bumblebee came alone in the 80s, or the 70s or something, and we've known about them this whole time, but in the first movie, that's not the case. So, but if you still like giant robots that can transform into cars or whatever, you still like that movie. And if you like fast cars and Vin Diesel punching people, you still like Fast and the Furious, and I like dinosaurs. So even though these movies have flaws and they're not perfect, I tend to enjoy them. Even I like parts of Jurassic Park 3. As a whole, there's a lot of problems in that movie, but I will still watch it because I enjoy dinosaurs. And if I'm going to pick the movie, I'm putting Jurassic Park on. If it's on regular TV or something, I will leave Lost... I can watch parts of Lost World. There are some moments where I just can't do it. And I feel like that one drags on the most. I feel like there was major stretches in Lost World that could have been cut out. But Jurassic World, I thought was so engaging and so fun. And this one too, this one's over 2 hours, but it didn't feel like it to me. It moved so, in fact, it felt like it was moving too fast at times, where things were just happening so rapidly that you weren't getting a chance to sit with anything. Everything was just moving and moving and moving, which I was grateful for when it ended, because I was like, oh wow. And side note, and not a spoiler, but a warning. I left when the credits started.
Yes. And
there is a stinger, apparently, that I've missed. So I need to go rewatch the movie now so I can see the stupid post-credit sequence. But there is a post-credit sequence, so if you haven't seen the film, stick around in the credits, because apparently there is a stinger, which they've not done in the past. So
no, they haven't. But I think this film has got... I think tonally there's kind of two films going on at once here, which for me worked. You've got the all-out action of the first, and then it switches up for something different, something more akin to what Bayona is good at times in the second film. It's got elements of the first Jurassic Park in it as well, which I quite enjoyed. But
some specific callbacks to the first film, which I was
a
little annoyed by, actually. I thought they were too explicitly taken, and not necessarily homage to the originals. But it's the franchise, so I guess it makes sense. But
yeah, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, then you may have seen some of the shots in the second half of the film. But I enjoyed it. I like what Bayona does. I'm looking forward to see what he does next. But yeah, go check out The Orphanage. But for me, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, it certainly wasn't perfect, but I had a lot of fun with this film. More fun than I thought I would have.
Yeah, and I still think it's a good summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
Definitely worth checking out on the big screen. I would say the biggest screen. I wasn't at an IMAX, but I was at a really large screening. I was out of town, so I was at a luxury Cobb theater, and it was a giant screen for a regular theater, and I was really happy with my selection. We can't just float with the Jurassic World all day.
Oh,
So
things are getting better.
let's get into our last movie for the month, which is Adrift. Adrift.
Yes, I've got to try and keep my head above water with these puns.
Yes, the puns are coming quickly like a hurricane. So, directed by Ballister, Cormacher. I'm sure that's wrong. Based on a true story of as a young couple's chance encounter leads them to first love, and then on to adventure of a lifetime as they face one of the most catastrophic hurricanes in recorded history. I didn't know this was a true story when I went to see it, actually. I learned it as I was watching it. Shailene Woodley is the star and also a producer, which I noticed in the credits, so she definitely wanted this movie to happen. Sam Claflin is the other lead. Basically everybody else on the list barely is in the film, but I guess I'll read a few more names. Grace Palmer, Jeffrey Thomas, Tammy Ashcraft. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize she was, I guess, like at the end. Elizabeth Hawthorne, I'm assuming, because it's cut off on my phone. It is. And that'll be it. Everyone else doesn't have pictures. I went to see this like 3 weeks after it had been out, and so it was a Monday night. Nobody was in the theater with me except for a mother, daughter. I had very little expectations of how great it would be. I figured it would be fine. I actually liked it more than that. I ended up thoroughly enjoying it and being captivated by the story, especially realizing it was true. It's such a harrowing tale. One that kind of is scary to me. Like, the idea of being on a boat for very long anyways is scary, but like being like stranded on a boat is horrifying. And I thought this film does a really good job with narrative structure. It does not follow a linear structure that you would expect. We start kind of in the middle, and we cut back and forth throughout the film, from their first encounters, them meeting, and then them on the boat after the storm, and we build to both, and it's just really engaging because of that. I feel like this is a movie that could have been kind of stock and standard boy meets girl, they go on an adventure, like hero's journey style, like they call it an adventure, they end up on this boat, things go wrong, can they make it, blah 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 blah, end story. And instead we start right at like the point of the accident, and then the struggle, and we see their connection, we see their develop things, and I was really invested. I thought the chemistry between Woodley and Claflin was really strong. Woodley, my wife pointed out before I went to see it that the reason my wife was apprehensive about seeing it and ended up not going with me is because her voice, Woodley's voice, gets on her nerves. And I hadn't noticed that, and then like while I was watching this movie, I'm like, my wife's right. Sometimes her voice, when she gets upset, it's a little grating. She's
Claire
fine.
Danes, is it?
Not quite as Claire Danes and I have a different issue, but Woodley, she's some of the stuff I've read about her, like outside, she does come off kind of flaky, a little weird, maybe a little hipsterish, new age, Gwyneth Paltrow type nonsense. Like, I've read things about her suggesting beauty tips and stuff, but I don't know, like, I first saw Shailene Woodley on her TV series on ABC Family, The Secret Life of American Teenager, and I watched like a few episodes with my wife. I think we watched the whole first season before I checked out, and because it was really bad, really campy, the acting was super like B-level, and so when she started becoming a star, I kind of was like shrugging it off, like, no way. I think I saw The Spectacular Now and was really impressed, and then I watched The Descendants, which I thought was great, and my wife finally convinced me to watch Fault in Our Stars a few months ago, and I really liked it, more than I expected to, and so I went in with Adrift kind of on being a fan of Woodley, and she's continued to wow me. I thought she was really good in this. I haven't seen much else from Claflin, but I'd like to see him in more. I'd like to see him get a solid like lead role, because it feels to me like the movies that I'm aware he's like, I didn't see Me Before You or whatever it was, but that was clearly like Emilia Clarke's movie, and he was the love interest. And this is
yes.
Shailene Woodley's movie, and he is the love interest. So I'd like to see him get a lead role, it's an interesting... I didn't mean to sound sexist, as if I'm like, oh, the women are getting all the lead roles and he's the love interest. It's actually kind of refreshing that that's the case, but it does... Poor Sam Claflin isn't getting any time to be the lead, and I feel like he could do it. He seems like he's got the talent, just, he doesn't get to do too much in these films. Or at least
I'd heard a lot about this film going in, that people were saying it was fantastic and a contender for one of the top films of the year. I wasn't swept away by the film. I was aware of the story beforehand, and I will say to anybody out there, if you're not aware of the story, obviously you're now aware that it's a true story, but if you're not aware of the ins and outs or the what happened in the real life account, don't Google it beforehand, because it will temper how you feel about the film. Go in blind, like you should do any film, but certainly for a film like this, don't check it out what happened. Just go and watch it, and I think you'll get a greater appreciation of the story or elements of it if you go in, completely blind. What I will say is I hate the sea anyway, and this film just makes me never want to go out on the sea again. I'm scared to death of the sea. So things like this and Jaws and all the other films, maybe The Meg as well, just don't help me with my fear of the sea. But I like Shailene Woodley. I think she was very impressive in this film. I too very much enjoyed The Fault in Our Stars, more than I had any right to, I think, and I'm glad to see Ansel Elgort also go on from there as well.
Yeah, me too.
He's a very tough, fine actor, but I really like Shailene Woodley, and I think she was fabulous in this film. Sam Claflin and I have a tenuous relationship, because I last saw him in My Cousin Rachel, which was, I think, my second or third worst film of last year. I hated that film with a fiery death passion, and I really did not like Sam Claflin in it whatsoever. But I do know that he is he's a decent actor. In this film, he's very decent. He does nothing wrong in this film whatsoever. I like him in this. In Me Before You, he does his job, put it like that. It's definitely Emilia Clarke's film, and anything with Emilia Clarke in, I'm on board with. But it's definitely her film. At times during this, I thought the writing was a little bit shaky, and only at certain times I didn't fully believe the romance. I believed that they could be a couple, but there were moments in it which didn't smack me in the face of romance. But overall, I think they worked well together. You're right; they are pretty much only members of the cast. I mean, it's tough to talk about this film without... I know we say that a lot, but it's tough to talk about this film without really getting into any of the kind of nuance of the story. Like you say, it's non-linear, so it follows different timelines. It starts here, it ends up there. I liked that. I think that works well, and it makes some of any kind of time jumps, it makes it less jarring that, if you will, that it goes back in time before it goes forward, and you see there's been time gone on. But
I was going to say, the one issue I had with the nonlinear wasn't the nonlinear itself, but I never had a grasp of how long they were together before they got on the boat to do the thing. I had no clue. The movie doesn't do a good job of giving us exactly, was it a week? Was it 6 months? Was it a year? There's no real sense of how long they were dating before they commit to this long journey together. And that doesn't necessarily matter, but I do think it maybe adds to the romance, I think, to a degree, like knowing how was this a splash in the pan, like they met and love at first sight, or was this a long relationship where they built over time and the love came with exposure to each other? Like how are we supposed to take this? And again, that's debatable whether it's a flaw, but it was something that I noticed. And my biggest flaws, no, not my biggest flaws, excuse me, my biggest issues with the film, I can't talk about without spoiling, and that is, a burden here, because the things that I want to really, explain why I'm not saying I love this film, or why I'm not one of the people saying this is a contender for an award, I can't bring up without getting into some major spoilers. So you'll just have to wait, and if you ever want to reach out to me and ask me my thoughts about things after you've seen the film, feel free to do so on social media. We'll give that information out later on. But
Yeah, the moment that JB is referring to, I'm on a similar level, but I met it with a different viewpoint, and again, I can't say why, which is frustrating. But to obviously protect the sanctity of it, we're not going to go into it, of course. But I saw it from a different viewpoint. That's just because I guess I knew more about what was going on because of previous I say investment, but so I could see why certain parts of this film would be met with divisiveness and also possibly annoyance, but I don't know, for me it kind of was justified, but for the reasons I know JB has, I'm fully on board with what he says, so do reach out to him, and because John's story is a lot more interesting than what mine would be, so do reach out to him and find that out.
I want to plug, too, a website that I like to use for movies like this that are based on true stories. It's called History vs. Hollywood. I think it is historyversushollywood.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a really good job of giving you, like, a side-by-side of, like, this happens in the movie, here's what happened in real life, this is the picture of the actor, this is the picture of the actual person. And it's, like, I used it for Alpha Dogs, and I used it for Adrift after I watched it, because I was really intrigued and wanted to know more. And so just to give them a plug, because I think they do really cool stuff, especially for these true stories. From what I've seen, they're fairly accurate. I've not done any real fact checking because I'm always more interested on a personal level. So I'm never like I'm not doing research papers on this. So I'm not looking to see how accurate they are. But it just gives me kind of more of a sense of what the movie was supposed to be. It feels accurate from what I've looked at, but I don't want to sit here and say they're the number one research thing. But they do it in a really cool, quick presentation, kind of bullet points, easy to digest sort of way about the truth. And so if you're like me and you watch Adrift and you want to know more, check out historyversushollywood.com and look at their Adrift section.
I might just go and look at that website just for sheer intrigue and interest in true story movies, because it's funny, Balthazar Kormacor, who directed this film, his last major film was another true story, Everest, which I quite enjoyed again for the most part. There were bits I didn't, it dragged on a bit too much, but I liked it. But he obviously enjoys, well, from these two films, taking real life events and making a cinematic, I want to say spectacle, because he doesn't aim for spectacle here. What we do get is very much a character driven, isolated piece. It's almost like a stage show, it's so small. But so it's interesting that he did that in his last main movie. He does a lot of Icelandic films, that's where he's from. But Adrift, I guess I wanted more from this film. I don't know if that's because of the hype that I'd heard on social media and just from critics whom I follow. There was no, or maybe it's just because the story is, it lends itself for such a compelling narrative. Maybe I just wanted more, but I didn't dislike the film. It's certainly not the worst film of this episode. But I think I just left not quite feeling seasick, but I did want a little bit more from the film. That very, very good performances. The story was, the writing, like I mentioned, was a bit up and down. There were moments with this film where you'll either throw your popcorn at the screen or you'll love. But overall, I'd definitely recommend going to check it out. Don't go in as blind as possible as well. Just enjoy the film.
I think that's the key.
Yeah, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as we did. I think John enjoyed it or appreciated it a little bit more than I did, but I still thought it was a very good film.
I think I went in more apprehensive than you, though. I went in, one, not knowing the true story. Two, I kind of went in thinking I wasn't going to be into it. And so it was able to win me over in those areas. And even the flaws that I mentioned, I'm actually thinking I'm more up on this movie than not because of some of my interpretations that I've allowed myself. I had some major issues with this movie, so I sat and really thought about it and was like, why would they do this? What would be the motivation? Why would a director choose to do this thing if this is the case? And the answers I was able to come up with are, I feel, make the movie even better than I initially thought. Now, to be fair, those are my interpretations, and they could be not at all what the director intended. But from my perspective, then, it makes it a better movie than my initial response. So,
I think we mentioned before that what you take from a movie can be just as important as even what the director may have interpreted. Until you get that concrete answer from the director, your interpretation is just as good as anybody else's. And I think if that's what you took from it, then more power.
For sure. And I think a lot of times when directors do feel the need to give you everything, it either one shows that they are, like, I don't know, art's supposed to be interpretive. We're not supposed to know every detail, and I think that is a key here. I would prefer not to hear the director's explanations and just let my brain think that that's what he was trying to do, because it made the movie better to me. But that is the last of the films that we both saw this month, and that's where our main part of the episode concludes. But Matt and I like to, throw out any other films we might have seen this month before we go. So, Matt, was there anything else you saw that we didn't talk about?
Nothing major, no. I know that I would have very much liked to have seen The Incredibles 2, but I'm going to have to wait for a few more weeks about that. But unfortunately, they are the main films I saw this month, which were released this month, and I'm quite happy with the haul of which I saw.
Well, I'm going to go through super quick. I'm not even going to go into extensive. My reviews for all of these movies are at burkreviews.com, so if you want details of why I like or why I dislike something, please go read them. Action Point, the Johnny Knoxville follow-up, I don't think I talked about last month, although I think I saw it when we recorded last month, but just in case, hated it, thought it was awful, should not exist. But if you were a super huge fan of Johnny Knoxville, you might find a little bit of joy, but you're probably better off just watching Jackass. I saw Hotel Artemis. I thought good, not great. Jodie Foster was amazing, though, and so was Sterling K. Brown, I think is the actor's name.
Yes.
And Dave Bautista. I would never in a million years thought I would be saying I like Dave Bautista as an actor. Really, really like Dave Bautista as an actor. He's won me over time and time again. I was a big wrestling fan. I think we've talked about that even on the show before. I still can't get over the fact that I like him so much as an actor. But Incredibles 2, 2 thumbs up for sure. Not as much as the first movie, but still it's got a lot of great stuff in it. It's a lot of fun. Some of the best action set pieces that I've seen this summer in this animated film. Like, there are some amazing action scenes in this movie that are so fun, so inventive, just absolutely brilliant. And one of the funniest sequences I've seen all summer is in Incredibles 2 as well. It involves Jack Jack, and that's all I'll say.
Awesome.
Jack is great. And if you like the short film that they did with Jack Jack, there is a scene in this movie that could have been as short, but I'm glad it's in the film. Thought it was great.
Incredibles 2.
Incredibles 2.
Sorry to jump in there.
Oh, no, please.
I hate when people ask this question, but I think it's justified when it's a sequel. But because it took 15 years, I think, for this sequel to come out. Firstly, is it a necessary sequel, justified, and is it a worthy sequel?
I think it's worthy, for sure. I think it does a good job of continuing to grow the characters. Justified is debatable. I've heard some good arguments as to why it's not justified. I think the guys from Film Spotting made some strong arguments, and I think Slash Film had some strong arguments against Incredibles 2. But ultimately everyone liked it. Like, it's even the people who are like, I don't know if it's necessary, it's still a fun movie. Like, so even the negative things I've heard have been minor negatives. I've only heard a few people or seen a few people really rip this movie up. There are some critics out there I feel like do go out to hate movies.
Yeah. Oh, my boy.
Yeah, definitely he's the epitome of that, right? Like, but there's a few that I follow on Twitter who are more casual, but like, it just seems like every time anything is popular, they have the contrary opinion. And that could be true, mind you. You could actually have that opinion, even if it's always contrary to everyone else's.
Sometimes it seems too contrary, too convenient, I think. So
yeah,
I have a few of those too. And sometimes I feel like hitting that big old block button, not because I don't agree with them, but because I don't agree that what they're doing is necessarily honest.
Yeah, and it's not real criticism. It's just, like, it's trolling. It's there to just bash people. Like, I genuinely love film, and for me to talk ill of a movie, it has to do something that I didn't like for me to be down on it. Because even, like, Adrift, we were both saying, we have negative things about it, but we both still liked it. Jurassic World, we have negative things about it, but we both still found it enjoyable because we like going to the movies. And it does things enough to make it enjoyable. Few movies like Winchester, that made us both just like, what is this? How did this happen?
Yeah. It doesn't mean we're going to like every film we ever see at the cinema.
Yeah.
But generally, we can have a keen eye for what's good about a film. But there are some films like that film you've just met, that should not be named, which are just unsavable.
But Incredibles 2, I think there's definitely some stuff there. There's some elements about the story that I feel like are really weak, and I wish they had done a little better with a few things. I'm trying not to spoil it for you or the listeners here, but overall I thought it was really fun and definitely a worthy sequel. Should it be made? I think that's debatable. I think that's much more debatable than is it good. I definitely think it's good.
For an Incredibles 3 then.
Well, money wise, you could definitely. There's a strong argument. As right now, again, it's looking to be the number 2 film of the summer. The last thing I saw that we didn't talk about, I just came out here in the States. I don't know if it's out where you are. Sicario: Day of the Soldado.
It is out over here. It only came out yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to see it. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully tomorrow. Yeah,
ours came out yesterday officially, but we always have Thursday night premieres. And our premieres, I don't know, it used to be like midnight showings, right? Now they do it at like 7 p.m.
7 o'clock, yeah.
So I always try to schedule those. I did go actually to the 10 o'clock Thursday night because you and I recorded Thursday for Movie Astrology, our other podcast. Yeah. But I like it. I thought Del Toro and Brolin were fantastic. There's some really cool supporting parts that I didn't know Catherine Keener was in the film until I was watching it. I was like, oh, that's cool. And a few characters from the first movie showed up that I wasn't expecting. Not Emily Blunt or Daniel Kaluuya, but a few other of the soldiers that we saw in the movie are actually in this, which I was like, oh, that's really cool that they stayed there because it makes sense in a lot of ways. But I was not expecting the story that Sicario: Day of the Soldado is about. And there's a lot of things in the movie that I was not expecting. I do think it's good. I don't know. I say this in my review, and this will be the last thing I say about this. I was confused about parts when the movie ended. Not necessarily about the ending, but about parts of the film collectively. And I don't know if that's on me or if that's on Taylor Sheridan's writing. It feels like it was on him, but I will be the first to admit I am politically ignorant more than I want to be. Politics and history in general, like the government, that whole thing has never been something that pulled me in completely, or at least that I don't actively seek out. I've been more so since Trump was elected president because I feel a failure in my political background now, so I'm trying to rectify that. But I still know that it's a weak area in my knowledge base, and so there's things that happen that maybe if I knew more about, I would have gotten more from the movie. But it was, for a sequel that felt like it shouldn't exist, it's pretty good. And I definitely think if you like Sicario, just for Brolin and Del Toro alone, it's worth watching the sequel.
Yeah, I've heard very mixed reviews about this movie. I'm looking forward to seeing it because I really enjoyed the first one. I've heard a lot of people either praising it as very good and hyping up the 2 performances you just mentioned. Other people just saying, quote unquote, it's trash, which I tend to believe it may not be trash, but I'm looking forward to seeing it, going in with an open mind, hoping for the best, but well settled for being entertained.
There you go.
And it's a summer of Josh Brolin, so either way he wins.
Dude, I've seen so many Josh Brolin films this year, not just his new releases, but like I've been watching other films. Like he was in Inherent Vice, the Paul Thomas Anderson film I watched. So right now on my Letterboxd, I have Letterboxd Pro, so it keeps my stats and stuff. I have seen, I think he is the most seen actor that I've watched this year. I think I have 6 movies of his under my belt this year, because I rewatched Sicario before I saw this one too. So that added to it. Plus, he's Cable in Deadpool 2, and he's Thanos in Avengers: Infinity War. He's in my top 5 right now for favorite actors. Though I love Josh Brolin so much. I haven't seen everything he's done, but everything I have seen, I love him, and I just think he's great. No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite films.
Yes, and he's in Milk as well.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. I just watched Milk.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah. Just, man, he's in so many great things, and can't stress enough how awesome he is. And that's I love his character in Sicario and Sicario: Day of the Soldado. He's such an interesting almost reminds me of The Dude. Like, if The Dude worked for the CIA or the FBI or DEA, whatever the crap agency he's working for. Because he's got this, like, kind of nonchalant, he's walking around, like, in Crocs and shorts where everyone else is wearing, like, full fatigues and stuff. He's just got this, like, I'm the dude. Like,
I'm going to go into the film tomorrow and imagine the dude swagging around. He's going to crack out some bowling or something, or about carpets.
I mean, there's this swagger that he brings to that character that is so unique for that type of character, and yet he still has, like, this strength about him. Like, it's like as if the dude were a military man. That's the attitude that I think he gives off, and I love that. I think Brolin's the perfect person to do that, and just love it. So I think that's the episode. I think that's the month of June for 2018. Matt, where can they...
Mixed bag.
Yeah, it was a mixed bag, right? Like, mainly positive, though. It's maybe lukewarm, even. Like, it's the internal temperature of a tauntaun, right? Like, it's right in there. There's nothing... I think Hereditary is the highlight for me. I think it's the best movie of this month, even though for me it was technically May. But Upgrade was the big surprise of the month, and everything else just kind of fell right where we expected. I think Jurassic World had some good stuff. It's made the most money. I thought Ocean's 8 was a very passable reboot / sequel.
Tag was the disappointment of the month.
Yeah, Tag was the... I can't even call it a disappointment, though, because I didn't expect to love it, because I know Ed Helms' last several films have not worked for me. I didn't make it to see the Fathers movie with Owen Wilson.
Father Figures.
Yeah, I didn't make it to that. And that's why, because
it's horrendous.
Yeah, and I like Owen Wilson. I'm one of those people that tend to find his humor very funny. Like, I love You, Me, and Dupree. I can't stand Matt Dillon in that movie, but I love Owen Wilson in that film. And the 7 different types of smoke is something I still say because of that stupid movie. And that reference might be falling on many ears who are like, what? But I like Owen Wilson. And Ed Helms was enough to keep me away from it. Like, that's,
wow.
Just because consistently, and I'm a huge fan of The Office. We've talked about it before. I like the seasons where Michael Scott is gone and he is in charge. So keep that in mind when I say I'm not a big Ed Helms movie fan. Like, I was an advocate for Andy being the head of The Office, and most people hate those episodes.
That's saying something.
Yeah, and I don't care for his movies. And I like the first Hangover. The second Hangover was a, bigger version of the first movie. The third one was really jumping the shark hard. And since then, I've been kind of down on Ed Helms. And, yeah, he has not won me over. I even watched Vacation. Good Lord.
Lucky you.
Yeah. But, Matt, where can they find you online?
The world can find me at whatiwatchtonight.co.uk. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for that handle and you'll find me. On Letterboxd as well, so if you want to see all my reviews, they're on there and on the website. And I also have a stable of podcasts which you can find on the website.
Yes, and I recommend his podcast. I do another one with Matt, Movie Astrology, which our second episode will be dropping soon. And, man, we talked a lot on that episode. I don't know if you know, it was like a 2-hour plus episode. But
it's a lot of fun.
It is. I really enjoy doing that podcast with you, and I enjoy doing this one with you. It's really been a great experience, I think, doing this whole BurkeReviews.com thing. All the movies I've watched, the experiences I've had, they've been amazing. And I couldn't be prouder of the things that I've been able to be a part of because of something I just decided to do. I am a journalist by degree. I have a degree in mass communications, but, I'm self-made as far as this goes. I'm not writing for anybody else, and I've got to meet some really awesome people. So, with that,
long may I continue.
Let's keep it going. BurkeReviews.com is where you can read my reviews at Burke Reviews on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. Follow us, email us if you have any questions about this podcast or movies that we talked about. Contact at BurkeReviews.com is a simple way to just shoot me an email, say what you got to say, and I can get back to you or possibly read it on our next episode, which will be July of 2018 when we'll be back. So
yes, and there is some fun films coming out next month, so I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. I'm very, very excited about July, especially Mission Impossible Fallout. That's the movie I'm the most hyped for, I think.
Yes.
But All right, Matt. Well, until next time, keep it real.
And keep it bloody awesome.
Blood, 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 bloody, blood, 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 bloody, blood, 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 bloody, blood, 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 bloody.